Well, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon if you're on the East Coast. My name is Mark Klages. I'm a regional manager with ACOM Solutions here in Long Beach, California. I wanted to welcome everybody here today and thank you for attending our webinar. I also wanted to introduce my teammate, Glenn Pagel, who will be taking over from me during the second half of the presentation to focus on the more technical aspects of EDI and integration with back-end systems such as packages running on whether it's a mainframe, AS400, or Windows platforms. Before we get started, I wanted to go over the agenda for today's presentation. What we'd like to do is start off with a basic EDI primer. When we decided to put this webinar together, we felt having a brief EDI overview was important. Particularly for those managers who may be up against some vendor requirements to trade in EDI and really have no idea what the heck this technology is all about. And for those who are really familiar with what EDI is, just bear with me for a few moments as I run through some of the basics so that we're all on the same page. The technical section, or second half of the presentation, that's going to deal with the 5 challenges that were advertised for this presentation. Glenn's going to take that part of the presentation as well as do some screenshots and really kind of dig into the whole area of EDI from a technical perspective. And before I get started with the EDI primer, I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about Glenn's background and why we're fortunate to have him as one of the presenters here today. Prior to joining ACOM, Glenn was an EDI consultant out in the field for about 18 to 20 years, working with such companies as Disney, Mattel, and Cisco, just to name a few. So the value that he brings to this presentation and to ACOM in general is really a street knowledge of EDI, what it's all about, and in the field approach, he's been involved in some major implementations. He knows our technology in and out. He's been a tremendous value to ACOM as well as us as part of our EDI sales team. Some of the things that Glenn will be discussing, back-end integration opportunities, which really deals with how businesses are integrating EDI transmissions into their back-end systems. Multi-standard implementation requirements, which what I mean by that is you might be dealing with things such as both XML and EDI as your requirements. Non-standard implementation requirements. This really describes such non-standard formats as flat files and things like proprietary database files. Business logic integration. Really common practices in integrating standard document types into back-end applications. And finally, one of the things Glenn will talk about is really self-control and automation. And this is really an important topic because it deals with making your EDI functions transparent in your day-to-day operations. And also the whole idea of streamlining and automating this whole process, which really can help you achieve an ROI in your EDI implementations. So on to the next slide here. This has to do with our EDI primer. So what is EDI? Basically put, EDI is just an acronym that stands for Electronic Data Interchange. And as the slide shows, it's just simply a set of structured defined standards for electronic exchange of business information. And this can be between a number of different business groups and government entities. So in the example that I show here, I'm going to go ahead and highlight this. Excuse my highlighting capabilities. But this shows kind of a standard outbound EDI transmission example. And I'm going to go ahead and cover some of the terminology that is involved with EDI. The businesses and other groups that I mentioned in the definition, those are referred to in the EDI world as trading partners. Now, the EDI documents that businesses use to exchange this information, they're really kind of typical of any paper document used for the same function. So one example of a document would be something like an EDI 940, which is a ship from warehouse order, which is used by a manufacturer to tell a warehouse to ship product to a retailer. And just like any paper document, it has the same information. It has a ship to address, bill to address, a list of product numbers, and quantities. So I'm going to move on to the next slide here, get rid of my drawing tool. So this is my standard document slide. Just in a very small example of some of the documents that you might see in the EDI world. Now, these documents, they're put together and monitored by a United States government standards body called ANSI, which stands for the American National Standards Institute. And what they do is they publish a number of standard document types for ordering, material handling, financial, insurance, medical, just to name a few. And they also deal with some specialty subgroups that have specialty transactions like medical HIPAA EDI. And looking at the user population in this presentation, I see a couple of folks from the medical field, so we can talk a little bit about that later. One of the common documents that you might see is what's considered an 850 purchase orders, 810 invoices. Those are all kind of common names for EDI documents and trading. For international trading, if you're involved with any of that, there's a standards body called EDIFACT, and that's managed and governed by basically a standards body within the United Nations. So this is our last slide before we get to the more technical discussion. I want to talk about a couple of different components here. Communications. There are a number of ways that businesses can transmit EDI transactions. These can involve things like email, FTP, modems, etc. And what seems to be the most commonly discussed are things called VANs. Now, VANs, V-A-N, is just another acronym. There's a lot of acronyms in this industry, and that stands for Value Added Network. And VANs, really, all they are is just an electronic post office. They're basically just an electronic mailbox through which EDI transactions are received and picked up by a recipient. And VANs, another duty that they can provide is they can also act to retransmit documents if there's an error, and also provide some third-party audit information. So it's kind of an interesting side note. We're starting to find that the popularity of VANs are starting to decrease a little bit, and this really has to do with the ongoing costs of VANs. And a lot of what we're seeing right now is customers are starting to use FTP as their communication protocol. Okay. Another EDI term is called mapping, and that's simply mapping the inbound EDI files or XML files back into your back-end accounting or ERP type application. Okay. Now, EDI mapping is done through a translation engine similar to what ACOM has in our Easy Connect product. And Glenn will go into some of the more technical aspects of mapping in his part of the presentation. So this kind of begs the question, as I hand this off to Glenn in just a moment here, is why EDI? Well, first of all, as your sales expand, you may possibly be under mandate by one or more of your trading partners to implement an EDI solution. Big retailers, companies such as Walmart, JCPenney, and some of the other big players in the industry actually require companies to do business with them to have an EDI translation solution in place. They require you to be EDI compliant, and it's kind of interesting. In fact, it's not uncommon for some of these big names to actually fine or penalize you in some way if you do not have this type of technology in place. And again, the other reason why EDI, it's just another tool that you may have a mandate for, but it's something that allows you to automate and streamline your business communications. Okay. one thing I'm going to mention again before I hand this over to Glenn, we had an appointment a couple of weeks ago with a company that was a third-party logistics provider. A ton of EDI transactions that they were doing manually. They had, I don't know, Glenn, was it 3 or 5 people that all they were involved doing was, manually mapping flat files to their back-end accounting application. And the problem that they were having by not having an automated solution in place is that they were actually missing orders, and they didn't have a reliable system of checks and balances to account for everything coming in. So for them, there was a huge ROI and need to solve this business problem.
That was an actual very good example of where they took a trading partner relationship and set up some company trading partners who were populating flat files from their EDI trading partner through the van down to a server application. Just really didn't automate that. We're triggering everything manually through a GUI interface. And sometimes they just forget to initiate the processes soon enough, and data files were being overwritten before they could be archived out. So, and thank you, Mark, for the generous introduction and the overview. The next portion of the seminar, we'll go through a technical discussion on a variety of back-end opportunities. A lot of what you do as a back-end integrator depends on essentially the industry that you're in. If you're in the ERP arena and you have a need to handle a lot of different documents, orders, invoices, and advanced ship notices tend to be your first 2 or 3 documents that you're going to be working into. In the medical systems, you're going to be dealing with eligibility, the 270, 271 type documents, or perhaps even the claims processing forms, the 835, 837. There's literally hundreds of documents you can translate. Transportation and warehouse systems users, you'll be looking at your 204s, your 210s, 214s to identify your shipment status. Banks and other financial institutions, you're going to be looking, of course, for remit device, perhaps processing of some check data, and certainly, of course, you have your own proprietary NACHA document formats that you need to work with. Invariably, though, it comes down to, what are you being forced to do? And that requirement really hasn't changed in perhaps the last 20 years. Any kind of a manufacturer usually doesn't get into EDI until they absolutely have to. And that's premise based on the fact that a retailer, a large part of their business, is forcing them to move forward into an EDI arena. And so those things taking place, companies really need to take a step back and take a look at not only just their immediate requirements, but to see if they have a genuine need to develop perhaps a 2, 3, or a 5-year plan and take a look at see how they can grow this EDI solution, change their business processes, and accommodate an enterprise system solution.
So what does this really mean for the customer, Glenn? I mean, what are some of the other challenges that customers are seeing when they're implementing an EDI solution?
Well, the challenge here is that a lot of companies, you've got these paper-based reports, you're looking at these things hard copy, you're trying to key them into your system. The opportunity is really to take the documents and apply the newer technologies that are available and actually insert these orders, for example, instead of printing them out hard copy and rekeying them into your system, is to insert them directly into your back-end application using a automatic scheduled tool to take the electronic data and post it up electronically into your back-end system, just kind of letting you know what takes place. You, of course, have the ability to view this in your ERP package, but the data goes directly to your back-end application, really kind of in a one-pass approach. Next part would be the ability to handle multi-standards. Once you've identified how you want to integrate with your back-end application, you'll certainly want to be able to handle multiple standards. Originally, times gone by, with our first generation EDI solutions, we simply had EDI to flat file or a flat file to EDI solution to put in place. These solutions incorporated a wide variety of documents that essentially all companies could use and trade in multiple different versions and multiple directions. In the late 90s, we saw XML come to the forefront, really took the spotlight, and many people thought that XML would actually replace EDI as the prominent traded standard. But that never took took place for a couple of reasons. Number one was the EDI community, of course, had such a heavy investment in it, they weren't ready to throw it away just yet. And the second part being the fact that when XML came out, there really was no one governing agency that everybody looked to for the standard, so you wound up with literally no dominant XML standard to adhere to. So it never really took off. Leaving the companies with the need now to support two different initiatives, the EDI standard and all of its variants, as well as the XML standards. You've got the European EDIFACT. So you need the translation solution that you deploy. Not only do you need it to integrate with your back-end application, now you also need it to handle all the multiple formats or actually generate a true any-to-any type of translation solution. So regardless of what your trading partner throws at you, you can accommodate that data and insert that into your back-end application directly.
Just a quick question, Glenn. What is any-to-any?
Any-to-any is the aunt of mine that I knew a long time ago.
Okay.
But essentially, if I've got a trading partner that whether he's going to send me an XML file, an EDI file, or his own proprietary flat file, that I can take any version of that, translate that into my back-end requirement, whether I have an XML integration suite or perhaps a direct-to-database application that I want to deploy. So really, anything my trading partner sends to me versus any type of solution I have on my back end that I require. All right? So that takes us into non-standard. Now we've talked about EDI, we talked about XML. You also have the ability now that where you need to handle non-standard documents. And a perfect example of this is a trading partner of yours who you've gone ahead and agreed to do business with, and really all they're going to do is generate for you an Excel spreadsheet export file, a CSV file, if you will. And what these kind of companies are, they're smaller companies generally. The documents that they generate are used as super users with the ability to generate these Excel files. They come from prominent business roles. They have no direct IT resources available to them. So essentially they give you the file that they can, and that file is usually a proprietary file of a common format. They can send it to you repeatedly, but you'll go ahead and accommodate that format and take that data into your back-end application. So the non-standard formats are usually their own proprietary documents they'll send you. They might even send you a full copy of their database that you would translate again. Second to the last here is our business logic integration. Not only do you want to be able to insert these transactions into your back-end application, but of course you also want to be able to validate things. You're going to want to validate UPC codes. You're going to want to validate the ship-to locations. If they send you terms, quite often on an inbound order, if you're the manufacturer, you tend to use your pre-agreed upon terms, but occasionally they'll send you some meaningful terms data that you need to be able to process and interrogate as well.
How does, sorry to interrupt, Glenn, just another curious sales guy here. How do companies get these requirements from their trading partners? Is things that are just published?
Well, usually a trading partner will send you a requirements document.
Okay.
And so specifically, like for an inbound 850 order, they'll specifically tell you what they're going to send you.
Okay.
So out of the, if you ever opened up an ANSI standards manual and took a look at an EDI order of what you could possibly receive, that's about 300 pages of documentation, where really you're only concerned about maybe 5 of the 300 pages that are really important to that relationship.
Okay.
So that's really what you want to map to, is what they send you into that implementation guide that tells you specifically what they're going to send.
Okay, great. That also takes us kind of into another topic, and again that I noticed in our attendees here, there are a few people involved in the medical field, and you were just involved in a installation a couple of weeks ago, and back again for some professional services that had to do with HIPAA EDI. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, and what's kind of considered HIPAA EDI hype or scare? Or
yeah, what I found is there's a lot of HIPAA scare out there today, where there's companies that will provide you a HIPAA solution, and in order to get you to use their solution, they try to scare you into the fact that you need to accommodate everything that a trading partner might send you. So if you're working with eligibility, or if you're working with claims, you're in the industry, of course, you realize there's many different ways that they can submit that claim. You have payers, payees. You've got a variety of different pieces to the puzzle to put together for these claims documents. And what you really need to do is just focus on that one relationship and what is required to trade within that document standard. And again, you run into the same situation. Instead of a 300-page manual, you're looking at actually a 500-page manual. And again, out of those 500 pages, you're only concerned about the 20 specific data elements or scenarios that you have to work with that trading partner. So again, you'll only want to handle those elements and segments that they're sending you and not really try to handle every possible scenario that could develop. Again, even there in the eligibility documents, when you send out the eligibility request, when you get the acknowledgement back as to whether they're eligible or not, again, those situations, you'll want to handle those specific segments and elements they're sending. All right.
Cool, thank you.
Last but not least is the self-control and automation. Once you've got this EDI solution in place, you need to be able to control the environment that it runs in. And with all these options that are available to you, with your ever-present and growing business requirements, means that your EDI technology that you deploy must also enhance your ability to control your own destiny. You don't want to be putting processes into place that are static and immovable. You want to be able to control these things and manipulate them on your own. So your translation tool should be easy to understand and conform to your requirements. You must also be able to change your own maps and your own processes as quickly, as easily as your business requirements change. With a lot of service providers, you wind up waiting months to have changes put in place for things that you need to change within a few days. So you certainly want to have that control in-house and at your fingertips. So you'll also have the need to process a variety of EDI documents. In a back-end process solution, you'll want to have the ability to schedule these things to execute in a 24/7 unattended mode and really just kind of manage by exception. So once the processes are put in place, they just kind of run on their own. If they hiccup, you want them to send you an email perhaps. And there's a lot of tools out there that do that. What I wanted to get into next was a specific example of an implementation that we've done within the last couple of years. It involves an SAP solution that we incorporated between an EDI and an XML requirement. And then we had added in another layer in there that we'll see at the end, where we had described a warehouse management solution as well. So we have an ERP manufacturer, trading EDI documents into our SAP backend. So that's kind of the high-level view of our solution and what we had deployed at the customer site. Obviously, we're not showing you the specific details or going through a true product demo here.
It's not a sales presentation.
It's not a sales presentation. What we did want to do today was show just highlight the interactive communications and capabilities of fourth-generation tools that you're seeing today. Over here on the right, we've got our customer over here. He's a customer that requires EDI version 4010. And then we just didn't discuss all the different various versions within EDI, but the ANSI Standards Committee tends to migrate and change the standard. About every 6 months, they publish a new revised version of these documents. We started originally back in the late 80s with about a dozen documents. The number of documents available to trade, of course, are well over 300 today. I think version 5040 is the latest published standard. These customers here that we're dealing with this particular trading partner stopped at version 4010, which was the first full 8-digit year compliant version available. So most companies stopped there. Their business requirements didn't change, so no need to migrate forward with the revisions in standard. So these customers, they're out here. They're independent companies. They will trade with our SAP user via a variety of methods. And the transport layers here, there's a lot to get your data between your customer and the SAP manufacturer. So the transport layer here is a value-added network for the FTP solution itself. A van, of course, gives you, like Mark was describing earlier, is the flexibility, number one, to just send it at will whenever you're ready. The data goes out to the van, and the van will retain it like a mailbox, and it will continue to store the data until your customer is ready to receive the data on their own. It's also handy, too, to have the third-party auditor, if you will, that will keep track of your documents by mailbag and confirm pickup and delivery of documents independently of your own solution. And quite commonly, though, and what we're seeing more common every day, is the use of FTP or AS2 communications over the Internet to go direct IP to IP communications. It, of course, cuts out the VAN. The VANs charge you various rates. Even in the last year, I've seen rates vary between like 5 cents a kilo character, which is 1,000 characters, or on upwards of 45 or 48 cents a kilo character, depending upon your relationship with the VAN and how long you've had it. Newer relationships tend to be discounted more than the older ones are. We're showing EasyConnect here as our EDI translation tool. It incorporates a lot of the technologies that we already described. It is the ability to take these EDI documents or XML, pretty much any document that the customer might send you, and we can relate it to the SAP. XML file definition is what we're using here, and we'll see a screenshot of that shortly. But it shows us here that we'll take that EasyConnect data translation, we'll convert the data from the EDI format into the XML format. The XML format is written to a directory on your server, on your PC workbench at the SAP location, and from there it's absorbed into the SAP application. You'll copy it or you'll move it to the directory that the SAP application is waiting for the data, and the transport layer will send it off to SAP. SAP will process it for its own requirements. And that kind of gives you a full life cycle of customer to SAP. On the reverse side of that, you have the similar thing, where you're going to go ahead and generate your outbound, let's say it's an outbound invoice document, so the invoice 02 format XML document is what you're looking for out of SAP. They'll generate that, they'll drop it into a directory that EasyConnect has access to. EasyConnect will pick up that data, convert it from XML to EDI format, put it into your transport layers execution arena, where it'll go ahead and pick up that data and transport it out to your customer's requirement based on VAN, FTP, VPN. There's many different solutions out there. To drill into this a little bit more in the specific document types that we were working with, I got to change my pointer here, is that we can go ahead and now the particular document that this customer was using was on the customer side. We had a simple EDI translation window of taking in their inbound EDI 850 orders, which was the driving force behind everything else that this customer was doing. The orders would come in, they'd run into EasyConnect. On the outbound side, again, it was the simple documents for this ERP manufacturer of 810s, 855s, which is the order acknowledgments, the 856 and 857 documents, which are your ship notice. The 857 is kind of a ship notice with invoice information, if you will, embedded in with it, and of course, acknowledgments. And that's one of the key features behind EDI, which is something you don't get in XML currently, is the fact that for every inbound 850 I receive, I acknowledge that immediately with a 997 document. That's called a functional acknowledgement. It says I received the order, not that I agreed to it, that I received it. The 855 is the document that you actually use to go ahead and acknowledge the specific content when you're going to ship it, etc. All right, a little bit more detail is once the data gets in SAP, that order came in, we're going to generate that order acknowledgement back out. These arrows are kind of reversed. What we should be showing here is the EasyConnect to SAP inbound order. We turn around and send back an order acknowledgement or an invoice. Down on the bottom half of this is once SAP had received that order again based on your shipping confirmation, what comes out of your warehouse management system, you'd want to be able to head and send out that the shipping acknowledgement information. That can come from one of two directions depending upon how you're doing it. What we had done here with this particular customer is in identifying their solution. The warehouse management system was actually a well-written, self-contained package where we could go ahead and actually send that data out directly from the warehouse management system. We didn't have to go to SAP and let SAP process it and then deliver to us the ship notice. The warehouse management system just sent the data in both directions, and we translated that document into the SAP format, delivered it back that way, as well as sent it off to the trading partner. So we're actually able to split the data and route it out 2 directions at the same time.
Glenn, this is a great presentation. We've talked a lot about our integration or general EDI with respect to SAP. In your experience, you've worked with some other ERP packages, Epicor for one. What are some of the challenges and hurdles and possibly things to look for when integrating or mapping EDI transmissions back to some of the various ERP systems and back-end legacy systems that are out there? Just if you could kind of highlight that a little bit for our audience.
Okay. Well, what we see here and what's in front of us is the SAP implementation. Because it was an XML integration suite, what that offered to us really was a lot of the Generation 1 type solutions, where we really just transition the data from one format to another and then send it off the back-end application and let it worry about how it's going to work with the data and what it will do for data validation. When it comes to other systems like JD Edwards, for example, or Epicor is another good back-end application to use. We have the ability to insert orders, line items directly into the database itself. The Epicor implementation that we did, we've got several of those, of course, and what we actually have to have the ability to do is once we've inserted the records into the database, we also then need to execute their stored procedures that are written on the SQL database to go ahead and apply their costing information to the order, and really all the line items are individually repriced based on their internal requirements and definition for that trading partner. So we have not only the ability to insert the rows into the tables, but of course the ability to execute stored procedures and custom code written specifically for the ERP package that Epicor has.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right. There's also a couple of other things I can talk to relate a couple of other points. When you go about setting up your trading partners, you really need to have some kind of a visual tool. And I went ahead and I took a couple of screenshots just as a couple of examples. We weren't going to go through a full-on Easy Connect demo today, as it is, just kind of keep it generic and high level, is that your tool needs the ability, of course, to identify your trading partner and be able to see how that relationship is built. So when I look at my sender IDs, receiver IDs, here I fabricated something for an AT&T relationship. They're going to go directly with ACOM as far as their sending and receiving of documents. So the screen here just highlights how you would associate your trading partner to your business entity. So a lot of it's done with sender IDs, receiver IDs. When you talk about enveloping and mail generation, your envelope really describes, and that's what the information here is, that your sender ID is AT&T, and that's who's sending you the data. We're receiving it here as ACOM, and when we respond, of course, those roll reverse. We will send the acknowledgement or the invoice, if you will, back to AT&T. So this screen just kind of shows you, it's just a simple setup, and shows you how we relate these trading partners within our particular tool. If I were to go to another example thing that we had described earlier, was when it comes to mapping and doing your data element definitions. How do I map? If I get these standard requirements and I need to start working with an 850 document or an 856 like I'm showing here, how do I define my internal view of that application requirement? And this really is an example of what not to do. Within each EDI document, you've got a data element segment, and you've got all the individual elements within that segment. So you need to be able to go ahead and control and look at only those that you want to. In this case here, I'm showing an example like the data elements are actually named, the BSN01, the BSN02, BSN03. That's really what you don't want to do. You want to go ahead and have realistic names and have these names be meaningful to you and really only map those elements that you require. A lot of tools and a lot of deployments that I've seen, they'll go through and they'll identify every data element, every segment that they could possibly receive, and make sure that their tool has brought all that across. Well, that's really not what you need to do. You really want to focus on the particular data elements and segments that are important to you, and only map and put into business logic for those types of data element requirements. A more useful schema, and again, this goes back to our SAP view, is specifically to look at only those current data element requirements within SAP. Now here we've got all the 8-character names available in the SAP IDOC, and this is what is we currently use at the customer site. And it's specific to their data element requirements. As you can see, there's none of the EDIEs built into the data naming conventions, and it's all specifically related to the data elements that they require, that they have of use within the tool set. All right. That's really the focus point of the technical conversation today.
Okay, Glenn. I think what we'll do now is perhaps take a look at any questions that we might have in place here. One of the questions that we're looking at is, I have no EDI solution in place. How do I eliminate the... Oh, okay. That has to do with more of a go-to-meeting type question for a thing here. Another question here is, let's take a look at this. You mentioned Epicor. Which of the Epicor products do you integrate with? The user mentioned he used Avanti-based.
Yeah, Avanti is one of the solutions that we do deploy EasyConnect solutions on. We have many installs in that arena. And so it is one of the cases where we have the ability to insert directly into the Epicor database and insert the order header and detail lines, for example, or for that matter, if we go ahead and go after the invoices on the outbound side, again, we process directly against the Epicor databases and just update the field that indicates we've already processed that data. So yeah, that is one of the solutions that we do deploy again.
Okay. Another question, Glenn, is we seem to have a lot of some existing ACOM customers on here that are also AS400 users. How difficult is it to map and exchange information with systems running on an AS400 or I-Series?
AS400s and I-Series, there's a couple of ways to go, and that's actually an excellent representation of two-generation solutions that are all in one. The first-generation solutions, of course, were the EDI to flat files. Second one is the ability to actually go directly against the DB2 tables on the AS400 using the ODBC drivers as they're defined to your Windows server. So in our particular tool case, we have the ability to import those ODBC drivers and use those ODBC drivers as we insert rows or for that matter, select and read rows off the tables and generate our outbound EDI as well.
Okay, great. That looks like it's about it for our questions, and we hope that you'll submit some additional questions to us. Just kind of on a general level, reflecting back into your experience over the past 20 years, Glenn, what are some of the biggest hurdles and challenges that companies have faced? I mean, is it getting an EDI solution in place? Is it an ugly process? And I'm sure you've been involved on some pretty complicated and ugly implementations, but just what are some of the challenges?
Probably one of the biggest challenge is identifying where your business process will change because you've integrated an EDI solution, or the fact that you need to integrate an EDI solution. You have no idea where to start. And the easy side of it is the inbound documents. The more difficult side is especially when it comes to something like an advanced ship notice, where your warehouse shipping floor must physically change the procedure and how they move the boxes, the crates, the product, if you will, across your warehouse, where you capture UPC codes, or maybe you don't. Are you generating your UCC 128 labels? There's a world of changes that will take place in your warehouse once you incorporate an EDI solution into that arena.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. I've got one more question. Continuing on in our game of what I like to call Stump the Expert. We talked a little bit about medical and HIPAA EDI. Are there any other kind of niche standards that our user population should potentially be aware of? And
well, HIPAA is certainly the big one today. It's really run into a Sarbanes-Oxley compliance requirements, as well as its own HIPAA influence and all the legalities that surround HIPAA itself, which are truly above and beyond the EDI requirements. EDI is in of itself a very small part of HIPAA, and that's certainly from the medical arena. If you look at other organizations like VIX, Voluntary Intercorporate Communication Standards in retail and manufacturing environments, UCS is a prominent industry subset of the ANSI X12 standard for the grocery industry. TDCC has been out there for many years for the transport industry. So a lot of those subsets are out there, and they have their own little requirements. But generally, of course, it all comes back to the ANSI X12 standard, and certainly the HIPAA requirements really have companies moving on EDI solutions.
Great. Well, I believe that that's going to conclude our presentation here. My name is Mark Klages, and my extension is 4309. Glenn Pagel's extension is 4200. You have our toll-free number there, as well as the email for our sales department. We'd love to talk to you and brainstorm really on a business level should you have any EDI challenges, or you're looking to implement a solution, or perhaps you have some trading partner mandates that you're dealing with. So give us a call if you have any questions. And again, it was a pleasure speaking with all of you today. Glenn, anything else?
It was a pleasure. Of course, you have my extension at 4200. This was really a very high level. We did not drill into the tools or any specific customer requirements, as those are proprietary to them. So we tried to put the material together based on just a generic flow, keep it topical, and if you have detailed questions, of course, please give us a call. We'd be glad to assess your particular situation.
Alrighty, well, I believe that does it for the presentation. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been a pleasure. Happy holidays to everybody here, and best of luck in the new